welcome back to my motherfucking channel. So pretty much this video, talk about the MacBook Pro. You know, the good, the bad, ugly, you already know. So enjoy the video. Peace. Well, for now. Yeah. Oh yeah, also, I'm sorry, I'm in Germany, so yeah, like, I'm gonna try to post some videos while I'm over here, okay? Yep, anyway, bye.
Just like the late 2016 MacBook Pro, the 2017 MacBook Pro uses the same design language that was introduced by the 12-inch MacBook. While the dimensions are still similar to last year's model, there are a few minute differences. The 2017 MacBook Pro model is just over half an inch tall, while previous models of the MacBook Pro are around 0.71 inches tall. The 12-inch MacBook is a lot slimmer, coming in at a half an inch, like pretty much on the dot at its tallest point. As with last year's model, Apple decided to go with an all-metal hinge instead of a plastic hinge used on older Retina MacBook Pros in the past. Also, this year's MacBook Pros received a revamped keyboard, which utilizes the second generation butterfly mechanism keys. Unlike the 12-inch MacBook, that has 4 color options, which are rose gold, space gray, silver, and gold, the MacBook Pro only comes in 2 color options, space gray and silver. For me, this isn't a big issue because I'm not a big fan of my electronics being too colorful. I'd like my computer to be as minimalistic as possible, and that includes color. But if you like to add a more personal touch to your devices, you might miss having all those color options. Apple first introduced the Force Touch trackpad on MacBook Pros in 2015, and it is now a feature on Apple's super thin new MacBooks. The trackpad is force sensitive, hence the name, which means it can tell how hard you're pressing down on it. But instead of an actual button being clicked, there's a set of magnets, not magnetics, that move just enough to make it feel like there's a click happening. Apple has put in some software settings so you can adjust how strong the click feels, and it feels exactly like a regular click too. Apple calls this little feature the Taptic Engine, which is a way better term than Force Touch. Even though there aren't many apps that take advantage of this nice feature, there are a couple, such as Mail and QuickTime, that do take advantage of the Force Touch trackpad. Now, is it a necessity on the MacBook? No, it isn't, but it certainly is a nice feature to have, and given that Apple wanted to make their laptop skinnier, this was a necessity. Apple has a long history of making the most beautiful displays on their computers, and this year the result is no different. The entry-level MacBook that I have has a 13.3-inch Retina LED backlit display that's IPS and not AMOLED, sadly. And it has a resolution of 2560 by 1600 that comes in at a very solid 227 ppi, or pixels per inch. This year, Apple also decided to make the display much brighter by upping the brightness to 500 nits, which means you have a super sharp and crisp display that makes your experience much more colorful, vibrant, and of course, brighter. Before Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 2 and the original peripheral Thunderbolt shared the same type of cable and port, and it also had fast data transfer speeds at that time of 20 gigabits per second and 10 gigabits per second. The difference between Thunderbolt 3 and its predecessors is that Thunderbolt 3 works as USB-C, and vice versa. Thunderbolt 3 is a lot quicker than Thunderbolt 2, with data transfer speeds coming in at a blazing fast 40 gigabits per second. Another feature that makes Thunderbolt 3 special is that it's backwards compatible with earlier versions of Thunderbolt, but because of the new port type, adapters and dongles are needed for the legacy Thunderbolt devices to work. I'm just going to put it like this. Apple's MacBooks have the best speakers on a laptop in the market. There's not one competitor whose product comes close to the MacBook in sound quality and clarity. The new MacBook Pros, including the 2018 model that just came out, do have an improved speaker system. There's no argument in that, but the speaker grills on the sides of the new MacBook Pros are mostly there for cosmetic reasons. There's a few holes for speakers and microphones, but most of the grill is just made up of small cosmetic dents that don't even make it all the way through to the chassis. Here's the thing. Though, at the end of the day, whether or not the grills on the MacBook Pro are real or fake, the MacBook Pro still has best-in-class sound quality for a laptop. Hands down.
But you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air, like unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air, like a blazing flare.
Apple promises at least 10 hours of battery life on their MacBook Pros, which is a number that has become standard at Apple's events when they introduce a new or upgraded MacBook. Now, if you're using it casually, such as occasional light gaming, light video editing, web browsing, or even watching movies and shows, you might get that 10 hours. Apple touts over and over again. But if you're a fake video creator like me and use Final Cut Pro, I'm telling you now, you won't hit nowhere near those 10 hours of battery life. Try like 6, maybe 8 hours if you're lucky, or if I'm lucky. My computer usage consists of heavy web browsing, heavy usage on Final Cut Pro when I'm editing videos, some light gaming, and a little bit of music playback, and some movies too. I'll start my day off around 9 a.m., and by the time I need to charge my MacBook, it's around 6 p.m. On really heavy usage days, I'd barely hit 6 hours. Now, I'm not saying the MacBook Pros have out-of-this-world battery life, like the MacBook Air. That definitely has like the best battery life on any MacBook. But it's definitely better than its Windows counterparts. Partly because macOS is a very light operating system and MacBooks are, obviously everybody knows, are basically optimized for macOS. So, yeah. One of the hottest new features that the new MacBook Pros introduced first in 2016 is the TouchBar. The TouchBar is a toolbar with a screen at the top of the keyboard that changes to different app-specific commands. It's basically Apple's way of saying, hey, our computers have a touchscreen just like Windows computers, but it's not really a touchscreen, it's our version of a touchscreen. Apple still believes that touchscreens work best on iPhones and iPads, and I honestly agree. I wasn't a fan of the Touch Bar because when it first came out, it didn't have much functionality to be an everyday used feature, and it still doesn't, in my opinion. And on top of that, you have to pony up an extra $500 for the 13-inch with Touch Bar and $1,100 for the 15-inch with Touch Bar. Now, don't get me wrong, the Touch Bar is a nice addition, but if you're buying a MacBook Pro for work or you're just a poor YouTuber such as myself, then you might just want to stick to the base model that has the function keys. I myself don't need the touch bar. I'm sorry, that contradicts the whole thing. Don't need the touch bar because 1, it's expensive as fuck, and 2, as I said before earlier in this video, there's not much functionality with touch bar yet. I'm not saying it doesn't have potential to be something great, but as of right now, it sucks. The base model MacBook Pro has a 2.3 GHz dual-core Intel Core i5 processor, 8 GB of RAM, and comes with 128 GB of SSD storage, which is basically nothing because macOS takes up about 40 GB by itself. So just a heads up, if you're buying this MacBook and keeping it long term, then I suggest you buy an external SSD or external hard drive. Anyways, on top of that, there's an Intel Iris Graphics 640 and 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. And also, just to give you a heads up on this, either buy a USB-C hub adapter, or you can buy a crap ton of dongles from either Apple or a third-party retailer. The specs on this MacBook aren't beastly, well, because it's entry-level, but it's really solid that can get most tasks done. It's only when you start doing high-intensive gaming or video editing that this machine will start to slow down. So if you're looking for speed and power, I'd recommend getting a top-spec MacBook Pro 13-inch with Touch Bar, or any of the 15-inch MacBook Pros with Touch Bar. Apple, I understand that everything is leaning towards USB-C for the future, but it's not like USB-C is ready to be a staple and make all legacy ports obsolete. I see the reason behind this move, which is Apple wanting to make their MacBook Pros thinner and lighter, but not everyone wants that, Apple. I don't want to have to buy a USB hub to get a legacy port that should be already there. I don't want to have to buy your expensive dongles to make up for the lack of ports. Apple, you're smart, you have some of the best engineers out there, so why can't you find a way to put on some legacy ports? Or why, don't you at least give your consumers a starter dongle shipped with a MacBook in the box? When you ship Apple AirPods in the box with a iPhone, well, why not your laptops? I mean, you're paying over $1,000 to buy your hardware, which is overpriced as it is. And you can't just throw a pair of $19 headphones and just to say, hey, thank you for buying our product. It may not be much, but it's our way of showing we appreciate you in some type of way. Come on, Apple. MagSafe, which is a proprietary port made by Apple to charge its line of MacBooks, was introduced in 2006, the year before the iPhone came out. What made MagSafe such a hit with MacBook users was that if you ever tripped on the MagSafe charging cable, the connector would automatically disconnect from the laptop without bringing the MacBook tumbling down to the floor, unlike Apple's new line of MacBooks, which charge by the way of USB-C. So now with the new MacBooks, if you trip on the charging cable, you better hope your MacBook isn't near the edge or gravity will take over. But fear not, my fellow MacBook users. If the lack of a MagSafe is stopping you from purchasing a new MacBook, there's a solution. You can buy a MagSafe adapter. Check these adapters out online. They're really cheap and they work just like MagSafe, so you don't have to worry about your laptop tumbling to the floor anymore. I know I always bring this up in every video, I really do, about an Apple product, but it's true, the price is too damn high. The base model 13-inch MacBook Pro starts out at $1,299, while the fully spec'd out MacBook Pro 13-inch tops out at $2,000 plus tax. But you get all the bells and whistles that the new line of MacBook Pros come with, such as TouchBar, Touch ID, and a slightly better processor, a slightly better graphics card, and a half a terabyte of storage if you want that, and 2 more USB-C ports. You're not getting that much more for your buck in my opinion, but like I said, it's an opinion. I'm entitled to it. I'm happy with my base model MacBook Pro. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it gets the job done even when I'm editing on Final Cut Pro. This laptop can handle it just fine. It's just a bit slower than the higher tiered MacBook Pros. That's about it. So if you're on a budget, like me, as far as being a YouTube creator or whatever, editor, whatever the hell you do, this is going to be a good MacBook Pro for you. Let me put it like this. If you're not a creative professional and you have a little extra cash in your pockets for a computer to do everyday tasks such as web browsing, light gaming, emails, and a light video or photo editing session, then by all means, go for it. The base model can handle all that and then some. But if you don't have no money, like me, and you're broke, not broke, but a little cash strap, then I'd go with the MacBook Air, especially if you're a college student. Whatever you do, don't get the 12-inch MacBook because it's literally a waste of money, okay? Literally. If you get the fully spec'd out 12-inch MacBook, it's going to set you back about $2,000, which you're paying for one USB-C port and one headphone jack, and that's it. Like, basically, you're paying for a computer that is targeted for people that don't want that much power and just want to do some regular web browsing, nothing heavy like Final Cut Pro. So I just don't know the purpose of the 12-inch MacBook. But anyway, you shouldn't be paying that much money for a dual core 7 Gen i7 processor. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. I literally paid $800 less for the MacBook Pro, the basic model, the basic tier, I guess, and it's faster. Just put it like that. However, if you are a creative professional and you're cash strapped like myself, then the 2017 base model MacBook Pro is definitely your computer. For those that don't have money issues, you can get whatever the fuck you want because me and you both know you'll be getting the 15-inch since it's way more powerful than the 2017 base model MacBook Pro. So that's pretty much, my review of the 2017 MacBook Pro. So, yeah. And that's my review of the MacBook Pro 2017 version. If you guys have any comments on how to make my videos better, if you guys could please like, subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys in the next one.